The boardroom was packed, but no one knew the new chairman's name. Patricia Holt sat beside her boss, Richard Morrow. She felt an unease she couldn't place. In the glass elevator, a man examined his security badge. It read, Executive Floor, Board. 3 years had passed since he had been inside this building. 3 years since a marriage ended. When the doors opened, Patricia glanced up, and the world tilted off its axis. The new chairman walked into the room. Patricia's hand went to her throat. Her ex-husband, Christopher Holt. The man she had once told to stay quiet was now her boss's boss. He smiled, a small, knowing curl, and scanned the room until his eyes met hers. The silence stretched. Richard still hadn't looked up from his phone, but Patricia's terror began 3 years earlier at a Christmas gala. With 6 whispered words, the Sterling Corporation Christmas Gala filled the ballroom with laughter and clinking glasses. Christopher wore his best suit, already a season old. Patricia had spent hours on her silk dress. He spotted Richard Morrow and moved to introduce himself. Patricia's hand clamped on his wrist. She pulled him into the hallway, her face tight.
Please don't talk to anyone. You embarrass me in front of my boss.
He wanted to say something, but the words disappeared before they reached his lips.
He nodded once, finished his wine in a single swallow, and set the glass down. Patricia rejoined her colleagues, all smiles. No one noticed Christopher slip toward the exit. Hours later, he drove her home. She scrolled her phone. He stared at the road. The silence between them was louder than any argument they had ever had. The dashboard lights cast a cold glow across his knuckles. Patricia never once looked over. Her phone buzzed. She laughed at something on the screen and typed back, as if he wasn't there.
Did she ever look at him the way she looked at that phone?
The car turned onto their street. His hands tightened on the wheel, but his face stayed calm.
Somewhere along the way, she had stopped seeing him, and he had let her.
When he pulled into the parking spot and cut the engine, the silence was absolute. He didn't move. Patricia grabbed her purse and stepped out without a word.
He watched her walk toward the building and knew this was the last night he'd spend under the same roof.
He didn't say it aloud. He wouldn't need to. He followed her inside, already planning his exit. The next Saturday, Patricia left for a team brunch. Christopher waited until her car disappeared. He pulled a single suitcase from the hall closet and began to pack. Not angry, just certain. On the kitchen table, he left a note. The note said, "I can't be your embarrassment anymore." He set his house key beside the folded note, then locked the front door from the outside for the last time. 3 weeks later, a process server handed Patricia a no-contest divorce filing at her desk. She returned from work that day to an apartment that already smelled like absence, as if the walls knew. The note was still on the table, exactly where he'd left it.
She stared at it and thought, he'll come back when he runs out of money.
She was wrong. 3 years passed before she saw him again, and by then everything had changed. Christopher started over in a city where no one knew his name. His first job was loading trucks at night. He slept 4 hours when he could. The rest of the time, he taught himself to code in coffee shops.
He told himself, every line of code is a brick in the wall between who I was and what I'll become.
He saved every dollar, invested in stocks and crypto with methodical precision, and his small portfolio began to swell. Within 18 months, his investments tripled. He used the capital to fund a logistics startup that he had been designing quietly. He pitched the startup to investors in a rented suit, voice steady, numbers memorized. They saw a man who would not be denied. The company sold for $32 million. Christopher walked away with enough to build something truly his own. Now he sat in a corner office, high above the skyline, and the name on the door was his.
He hadn't forgotten a single word Patricia whispered that night, but he had stopped letting it poison him.
The work of becoming someone else was finished. Now, it was time to decide what to do with the power he had built. It began with a quiet phone call, an offer to acquire the struggling parent group that owned Sterling Corporation. The deal closed in 6 weeks. When you don't ask questions, the paperwork moves fast. He sat in his office and opened the employee roster of his newest acquisition. Halfway down the list, a name he recognized, Patricia Holt, Director of Marketing.
He had known she was there, of course. He had always known.
The file showed her salary, her promotions, and Richard Morrow as her direct supervisor.
Richard Morrow, the man she had been so desperate to impress.
He closed the file with the same quiet smile he had worn in the elevator. He sent a single instruction to his assistant. Schedule the restructuring announcement for next Tuesday. The machinery of consequence began to turn. Patricia Holt had no idea. Tuesday morning arrived with nothing more than a routine email about a corporate restructuring. Patricia scrolled past it without stopping. The name of the new parent group meant nothing to her. In the break room, colleagues traded theories about the new chairman. Someone guessed a tech billionaire.
Whoever it is, Richard will handle it. That's what bosses are for.
She focused on a quarterly report, the numbers blurring in front of her. Across the city, a black sedan pulled to the curb outside Sterling's headquarters. Christopher Holt stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks. The morning sun glinted off the glass tower. He walked through the lobby, past the security desk where he used to badge in as a low-level IT worker. The guard handed him a visitor badge, executive floor, board, and nodded with no recognition. He slipped it into his pocket and moved toward the elevators. The glass elevator doors closed, and the car began its silent ascent. Through the transparent walls, the city shrank beneath him, block by block. He did not look down. He watched the floor numbers climb and let the silence settle around him like a familiar coat. On the executive floor, a long hallway stretched toward the double doors of the main conference room. Christopher stepped off the elevator and walked without hurry, his footsteps soft on the carpet. In the conference room, Patricia laughed at something Richard said and gestured at a slide deck on the table.
I am telling you, Richard, the Q3 targets are conservative. We can push higher.
Whatever the new chairman wants, we'll adjust.
Outside, a hand settled on the door handle. The brass turned, and the door swung inward, pulling the room's attention with it. Christopher Holt stepped into the room, and the air changed.
Patricia's mind refused the image. It couldn't be him. It couldn't.
Her hand went to her throat, the same gesture she'd make in 3 years' time.
Richard looked from Patricia to the stranger, confused. Why was she so pale?
Christopher didn't pause. He walked to the head of the table with the ease of a man who had already won. The room full of executives tracked his every step, the silence tightening. Patricia's fingers dug into the table's edge until the wood grain pressed into her skin. At the podium, he rested his hands on either side and let the weight of the room settle onto his shoulders. His eyes swept the audience slowly, pausing, just for a heartbeat, on Patricia. Then he smiled. A quiet curve that did not reach his eyes, and the silence thickened. He began without notes. His voice was low, but it filled every corner of the room.
I want this company to be a place where nobody is told to stay quiet for someone else's image.
The words hit her like a blade. He knew. He had always known.
Richard Morrow shifted in his seat. The ground beneath him suddenly felt thin. Christopher paused, letting the weight of the sentence press down on every executive. Patricia's spine locked. She could feel eyes darting toward her, though no one dared stare directly.
Richard's pulse quickened. The chairman knew something and wasn't going to forget.
He concluded with a series of reorganization points, his tone never rising, never softening. When the meeting adjourned, chairs scraped back, and voices started to murmur. But Patricia stayed frozen, her hands still gripping the table's edge. Richard glanced at her once, then quickly looked away and hurried toward the door, his shoulders tight. People filed out, voices low. Patricia finally released the table and stood on stiff legs. In the hallway, she saw Richard moving ahead, his pace unmistakably a retreat.
He wouldn't look at her. He was already calculating what the new chairman might know.
She called his name, but he didn't turn. The sound of her own voice felt foreign. Colleagues passed without meeting her eyes, their whispers starting before they were out of earshot.
The word embarrassing echoed in her mind, the same word she had used at the gala.
By the time she reached her cubicle, the fluorescent lights felt too bright, the air too thin. She sat down and stared at the dark screen. The report's meaningless now.
For the first time, she understood how it felt to be the person nobody wanted to be seen with.
Richard had already canceled their afternoon one-on-one. The notification blinked on her monitor. The next morning, she opened her calendar and sent another meeting request. It was declined within the hour. She stood outside Richard's office. The door was closed. Her knock echoed unanswered.
He's never done this before. Not even during the worst quarters, not when results were ugly.
In the hallway, she spotted him on the phone. His voice clipped. She moved to intercept. He held up a hand without breaking stride, turned his back, and kept walking. The gesture was final.
Richard, please. We need to talk.
Not now.
She froze. He stepped into the elevator without looking back, and the doors closed.
He's treating me like a contagion. Like being seen with me will infect his career.
That night, she checked her calendar. Every recurring one-on-one had been removed. The message was clear. In the chairman's suite, Christopher scrolled through weekly performance metrics, the glow of the screen steady on his face. His assistant entered, tablet in hand, and mentioned that Richard Morrow had been canceling his one-on-ones. The marketing floor was unsettled. She added that Patricia Holt had been trying to reach her boss, but the requests were denied.
Let them work it out.
He didn't ask for names. He didn't need to. He already knew. The tablet screen still displayed the organizational chart. Patricia Holt's name highlighted in the marketing hierarchy.
He waited for the inevitable, for her to crack under the weight of silence.
He closed the file and returned to the quarterly forecast. As if nothing had happened, outside his window, the city moved on, but inside the building, the machinery of consequence was still turning, and Patricia Holt would find no relief from above. Not now, and not ever. By midweek, the story had spread through the break room like spilled coffee, impossible to contain. Over the hum of the vending machine, a voice cut through. "I heard she's his ex-wife." Another replied, "She must have done something terrible for him to disappear like that." Patricia walked in mid-sentence. The room went quiet, all eyes on her. Someone didn't get the memo and whispered, "That's her, the woman he left." The phrase landed like a slap. She forced herself to pour coffee, her hands shaking. Later, at the cubicle cluster, two colleagues pointed toward her desk and whispered behind cupped hands. She saw them in the reflection of her monitor. The word liability drifted through the air. She fled to the restroom, locked herself in a stall, and pressed her forehead to the cold metal.
She looked at her own reflection and thought, I've become the woman he left, and nothing else.
The next morning, Patricia didn't bother knocking. She pushed open Richard's door and stepped inside.
Why are you freezing me out? Do you even know what this is doing to me?
He flinched, his gaze darting to the door as if expecting someone to follow.
You are a liability, Patricia. The chairman clearly has issues with you, and I won't be dragged down.
He wasn't being cruel, he was being strategic. And that was worse.
Just do your work quietly. Don't make waves. Maybe it will blow over.
Don't make waves. The same words she had used on Christopher 3 years ago.
She opened her mouth to argue, but the fight had already left her. She turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind her.
She realized then that she had become exactly what she once feared. A dead weight no one wanted to carry.
That afternoon, Patricia left the marketing floor early. In the deserted hallway, she saw him, Christopher Holt, walking alone.
Christopher, please, just a minute.
He stopped, but didn't turn. The silence stretched before he finally answered.
There's nothing to discuss.
She wanted to apologize, to explain, but the words would be nothing more than noise to him.
He started walking again, his footsteps measured, final. She called after him, but her voice cracked on his name. He didn't look back. The door at the end of the hall swung shut, and the light swallowed him.
She had used her last chance, and he had given her nothing. Not anger, not bitterness, just silence.
She stood alone in the corridor, the hum of the ventilation, filling the space where his words should have been. Patricia returned to her desk, the screen's blank white, a quiet dare.
She placed her hands on the keyboard and thought, if I stay, they will tear me apart in whispers.
She began to type, each word a deliberate exile from everything she had built. The The resignation letter was short. She read it once, then pressed print. The printer hummed. She watched the paper slide into the tray, the machine working without hesitation. She signed her name at the bottom, the pen almost tearing the paper.
She stared at the signature and realized she hadn't signed something this final since her divorce decree.
She folded the letter into crisp thirds and slid it into an envelope. Her hand rested on it, a quiet refusal to be the rumor any longer. Outside the cubicle, the office carried on without her, but inside, something was already gone. She walked to Richard's office without stopping, the envelope light in her hand but heavy with consequence. She didn't knock. She simply placed the envelope on his desk and slid it toward him. Richard looked up, startled. He picked up the envelope, his fingers fumbling with the seal. He read it slowly, his shoulders dropping as the words settled. The tension in his jaw softened.
I'll have HR process this immediately.
Patricia didn't answer. She turned and walked out, leaving him with the paper. The moment the door clicked shut, Richard reached for his phone.
Yes, Patricia Holt's resignation came through. Process it today.
In HR, the notification appeared, and the system started the exit procedures. The letter lay on his desk, a small weight that cost him nothing and cost her everything. The tablet on his desk lit up with a soft chime. HR notification. Christopher glanced at the subject. Resignation. Patricia Holt. He opened it without pause. He read the letter slowly, not searching for an apology, just the signature. Then he set the tablet aside. What needed to happen had already happened. He rose and moved to the window, the city skyline stretching below. In the glass, his reflection showed a face that had not changed, except for a faint, almost imperceptible smile. It wasn't joy, it wasn't cruelty, it was closure, quiet and complete.
He didn't need to see her leave. He already knew she would. The silence had done all the work. He had simply given it space.
And with that, Christopher turned back to his screen, the matter already filed away. On her last morning, Patricia packed her cubicle into a borrowed cardboard box. She did not take the picture of her and Richard at the Christmas gala. She left it face down. Nobody stopped by. Her inbox was already silent. Carrying the box, she walked the long hallway to the elevators. In the lobby, the security guard nodded once, indifferent. At the exit, she looked up. High above, a silhouette stood at the chairman's window. Christopher watched her without moving. A single figure against the sky. She held his stare for a breath, then pushed through the revolving door into the street. The door sealed shut. The lobby returned to its polished silence. Outside, the city swallowed her, and the window where he stood returned to empty glass. The office dimmed as the sun slipped behind the skyline, leaving only the desk lamp and the glow of the city below. Christopher had not moved from his chair for over an hour. His laptop screen flickered once. Then he reached over and closed it with a soft click. The silence was no heavier than normal, but it felt different tonight. He glanced toward the door, the same door she had last walked through, then let his gaze drift to the window. The city lay glittering under a violet dusk, 1,000 windows lit with stories that had nothing to do with him. He could just make out the street where she had disappeared, the revolving door, now still. His expression betrayed nothing, no triumph, no regret, only the residue of a long-finished calculation. He did not smile, and he did not sigh. He simply sat, a silhouette against the low light, waiting for nothing. Outside, the night thickened. Inside, the office held its breath. Patricia sat on the bus, the only passenger in the back. The city lights slid across her face, a kaleidoscope of moments that no longer included her. She did not check her phone. She did not look for messages. Outside the window, the towers of the financial district passed one by one. Somewhere inside one of them, a light still burned, but it wasn't hers. The reflection in the glass showed a woman with dried tear streaks and a face that had stopped fighting. She thought nothing. Not yet. The thoughts would come later. The bus jostled over a pothole. She didn't brace herself. Outside, the skyline faded to a deep blue, the first stars invisible behind the urban glow. The camera pulled back slowly. the bus becoming just another light moving through the grid of the city. And then nothing.